let's try to do this again. Mitch McConnell is in the Senate threatening to raise all hell. It's Groundhog's Day. I did the first video, but that video took way too long and it shouldn't have been that long of a video. It's like a 10-minute video, so I'm not quite sure what took place. But let's speed it up when we're explaining it to get that across a little bit more energetically. Mitch McConnell is in the Senate. He is a terrified little man, and yet he is flexing and ripping his shirt off. Why is he doing this? Why is this elderly man flexing and flailing his gonads in this tribal, aggressive way? Well, he's doing it because he's been depowered. He's weaker at this point. When McConnell was in power, he never had to show these displays of strength like this. He didn't have to pick up a truck or anything. No, he just walked out and there was an air of power around him. Kill that guy. Beat that guy up. He could do that. That's where he was. That is not where he is now. And in the position he's in, yes, 50-50, but the tiebreaker vote is Kamala Harris and her kicks dancing her way in order to make that 51st vote. The interesting part is that what Mitch McConnell is terrified of is a real threat for him and his party. The other part is that the Democratic Party in no way is going to do what he's most terrified of, which makes this that much more interesting. I'm going to explain what McConnell is thinking about. I'm going to explain what Democrats are thinking about. I'm going to explain why McConnell does not have to worry about his biggest fears. But there is a chance, though, that some aspect of that fear may come to pass, especially with Joe Manchin talking about augmenting the filibuster. That's the thing that I want to talk about. And I want to show you McConnell basically threatening scorched earth. All hell breaking loose. Lucifer coming up, just roaming around, eating babies and kicking dogs and puppies. If you touch the filibuster. If you don't, we can be cordial. But if you do, all hell will break loose. I want to go into McConnell and the all hell breaking loose. And I'm going to make the point to say, McConnell, what you should do, if you're honestly playing, hard-nosed politics, smash that filibuster. And when you smash that filibuster, you enact the agenda, the diminutive agenda that you told America that you were going to act. And at this point, because you've beaten down the public so much in regards to not expecting anything from its government, the diminutive agenda that you push through will be acknowledged and accepted and appreciated by a public that typically gets nothing. What does that mean going forward, though? In the midterms, when the people say, whoa, my real material concerns were met by the Democratic Party, I've never felt this way before. And hey, maybe if I continue to vote for them, maybe my material concerns will continue to be met. It's that thought. That's the point that I'm trying to get across to you. When people believe that the political party is representing their interests in real, tangible, material ways, hey, they pass health care, so I don't have this health care bill anymore. They eliminated $50,000 of my student debt. No, it's not all of it, but wow, that's a huge chunk of it. Hey, they expanded health insurance or Social Security. So my grandmother didn't necessarily have to suffer, or she could basically live in a certain degree of dignity where she couldn't necessarily live in before because of the way it was. Those are real, tangible concerns that people have. Real, tangible, real world things that you can do to make people's lives easier. The $15 an hour minimum wage, again, this is another no-brainer if you're looking at it from the context of how do we help people? Heroes! They called them heroes when we needed them to be at those shelves, when we needed them to be in those warehouses, and those places were basically death chambers. Now, we have the vaccine. So they're not heroes anymore. They're back to being clerks and those other people who are basically disposable in our system. The Republican Party has a problem, and Mitch McConnell knows it. And I want to talk about it when we come back around because, like I said, the filibuster. If the Democrats were trying to run the House for nearly a decade, they would smash the filibuster immediately and they would enact America's agenda. They're not going to do that. McConnell, however, is still terrified. Welcome to Late Night Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. I appreciate the opportunity you guys give me to do this content. McConnell is acting very strongly to this, and I'm going to show you his speech in a minute. But the thing that you need to realize is he's at a weakened position. He didn't need to act this way before. He's acting this way now in this sort of threatening directly Democrats. If you touch one pubic hair of that filibuster, I will raise all hell up in here. And just like throwing over chairs. So, but he's doing that because he is depowered. Isn't that wild? It's like he has to show strength now in these kind of just provocative ways in the things that he's saying, because he can't just sit there and radiate it in normal ways. He has to be threatening. But the key here is he's only as threatening as Joe Biden allows him to be, meaning he's not threatening at all. And what you should do, smash the filibuster. Smash it. Break that thing into bits and pass America's agenda. Joe Biden is not going to do that. But if the Democratic Party had any notion of self-preservation, yes, the expanded the voting thing is a good idea. That's one of the things he's probably scared of. But beyond that, expanding the voting, you have a fundamental problem that the American public believes that you are every bit as much in the pocket of corporate America as the Republican Party. They believe that they only were given two choices of two corporate candidates and that you were better than Trump. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't see you as a corporate candidate funded by cash every bit as much as the Republican Party. Now, how do you break that? I mean, you're supposed to be the party that represents the working class. You're supposed to be the party that represents the poor. And yet, you don't. Clear as day. You don't. And so how do you change that characterization if you don't? Like, how do you change the characterization in and of itself? I would say one of the ways you do that, and one of the ways that it seems like somebody in the party structure might have thought of is, look, even if we have to fool the people for 2 years or 4 years, that plan is better off than losing them to the Republican Party. Meaning, if there was any notion of self-preservation, it seems like functioning with the idea that we're going to represent the interests of the party or the public this term seemingly would be in your best interest. That doesn't necessarily come up. You get these modest, diminutive proposals that these guys put out. But like I said, if you just passed what you told people you were going to pass, you would get your midterm win. The Senate will remain in Democratic hands. The House will remain in Democratic hands, if not gain more. And in fact, passing that particular agenda, like I said, because the public is so used to not getting anything, getting something, even if it's small, is on some level shocking. And so the public would back you on that. The Republican Party is against those things, which makes them easy as pie to run against. When the $1.9 trillion stimulus was being debated among Democrats and being lowered among Democrats, Republicans were talking about Dr. Seuss. They couldn't even add into the conversation because they knew they were at a disadvantage in the conversation. The last thing they wanted to do is say, I do not support giving you $1.9 trillion stimulus, even though I know the population has been beat down. I know people who are in my state that are beat down. I don't support that. And so instead of saying, I don't support that, it's, look at what Democrats are saying about Dr. Seuss. Those statements are pretty much the same. McConnell knows that that's grotesquely unpopular. He knows that any of those policies that Democrats are going to push through, if they wanted to push through, for example, elimination of student debt, that has 60% approval across the board, not even just Democrats, just the entire population. Expansion of Social Security, 70% support. Medicare for all, 70% support, I believe. Wealth tax, 60-70% support. Like, these are lefty policies that the public, for the most part, says, yes, I agree with that. That would add material benefit to my life. And yet, the Republican Party in no way agrees with it. And the Democratic Party, basically, in no way agrees with most of them. Even the Green New Deal gets like 60-70% support. So what is Biden going to do? He's probably going to give his version of all of those things. All of it is going to be massively inadequate. And yet the public, who doesn't get pretty much anything, is going to be shocked by it. Here's the wild part. The only way you can really do that for certain is by smashing the filibuster. And to believe that Mitch McConnell is going to work with you on any of these policies would be outright ludicrous. You have the capacity to pass America's agenda. Do it. It's modest at best. It's not even enough, but do it. Hold the midterms. Hold the other as you get to the presidency. And what will happen in less than a decade, the Republican Party will trend to the left. They've done it before. It would happen again. When Reagan gets in office and Democrats start taking all of that cash and they start becoming clones of Ronald Reagan. And then you get the third wave Democrats that basically get rid of the New Deal Democrats and they hold the party line. They run the roost. The Republican Party, when the Democrats did that, didn't just shake hands. They moved further to the right. And you ended up with this kind of right-wing framing of arguments and everything else where Democrats were firmly on the right and Republicans were off a fucking cliff. But the key here is if you start winning and you start bringing in numbers to your particular party position, and let's say your party position moves somewhat further to the left, they will have to in order to be relevant. They did it during Eisenhower's day. I don't see why it would be any different today. Let's hear McConnell. He's talking about raising all hell. And I'm making the point he doesn't have power to do it.
So let me say this very clearly for all 99 of my colleagues. Nobody serving in this chamber can even begin to imagine what a completely scorched earth Senate would look like. None of us have served 1 minute in a Senate that was completely drained of comedy and consent. Even the most basic aspects of our colleagues' agenda, the most mundane task of the Biden presidency, would actually be harder, not easier. Perhaps the majority would come after the other rules next. Perhaps Rule 22 would just be the first domino of many, until the Senate ceased to be distinct from the House in any respect. This chaos would not open up an express lane to liberal change. It would not open up an express lane for the Biden presidency to speed into the history books.
What's funny here is the belief that Mitch McConnell is going to stand there and help Joe Biden pass a liberal agenda and then run off into the history books. How ludicrous is that? Like, he acts as if nobody has seen him in action over the past decade or so. Obama was a scorched earth Senate. Scorched earth as I've ever seen one. Anything that he wanted, they opposed. They did that rigorously as a rule. They went so far as to not wanting to pass the debt ceiling. That's basically stuff that we've already bought. And you just have to requisition the money for it. And they were like, nope, we're not going to do it. Because they thought it fucked over Obama. And so they thought that they could force him to get stuff. That's the stuff that they were doing in the Senate. It's like, oh, we're not going to raise that. We can't raise that a red dime. And then when Trump gets in, they raise it $9 trillion. Talking about the debt ceiling. Like, are you serious? And then Merrick Garland, they didn't even let him they didn't even bring him up for a vote. And Obama stood there, thumbing ass. and just watched, having not seen the energy, drive, urgency, care to get this man over the finish line. It's astonishing. So I don't know what he is talking about, unless he's talking about something else where they're like taking actual dumps on the chamber chairs and just kind of getting up and walking out. If that's what he's talking about, yeah, that's gross. And that's fucked up. That's worse than a scorched earth Senate. I don't know what kind of Senate you call that, but that's pretty disgusting. It ceases to be the Senate in the way that we typically know it. And I don't necessarily want that to be a typical trend in the way that the Senate functions. But by the same token, you can't let this guy make these kind of edicts. He's basically threatening you. And I am making the point that you should not accept that threat. And he's threatening you because he's terrified that you're going to touch the filibuster. Like I said, I think what Mitch McConnell sees is that if the filibuster was blown away and Joe Biden decided, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to pass Medicare for all. Or I'm going to pass public health, the public option. And I'm going to give the $50,000 in debt. And I'm going to, give this Green New Deal or this big new energy policy. I'm going to do all of this stuff. I'm going to spend trillions of dollars. We're going to give back to America. I'm even going to push back the $15 an hour minimum wage. I'm going to do all that. He couldn't do anything to stop it. That's the point. He has some procedural stuff that he may be able to do, yes. But from the standpoint of standing in the way of the agenda with 51 votes, if the filibuster is not there, he can't do anything to stop it. And don't weep for him on this. The Senate is already a minority chamber. You have California, 5th largest economy in the world if it was a state. If it was a nation. 2 senators. Iowa, nothing in the world. 2 senators. Those 2 states, dramatically different in size, get the same number of senators. Meaning it's already a minority-oriented body. You don't need to add this other edifice of a filibuster. Other nations have parliaments that work just fine with the majority vote. You have 2 chambers and you have a president. Yeah, you already have that stuff that's built in. The public gave the Democratic Party an option or a mandate to run. They're going to run. Or at the very least, they should. And McConnell knows if they do that, Democrats will dominate the political space for a decade. And like I said, after a while, the Republicans will start to migrate closer to the Democrats' position. Going further on that front, McConnell maybe has something to worry about because Joe Manchin is talking about being open to the filibuster being changed. I don't know what that means. So let's put a question mark around that one. I would make the point that Joe Biden doesn't want the filibuster changed, probably doesn't even want it touched because he wants a fake door, a fake wall to block his agenda. He doesn't want to be able to do too much because he doesn't believe in doing too much. He already has a diminutive agenda and he needs that backstop. He needs somebody to blame and excuse. Joe Manchin is usually a senator on this, but he wants to be able to say the filibuster stopped me. The filibuster stopped me. The Republicans, they just got pushing back. But he knew that. And the question is, what kind of deal do you think you're going to get through a Republican Congress? And if you believe that McConnell is going to work with you, you are utterly insane and are being suckered. You should know him well enough now to not believe anything that he is saying and realize this is bluster. Blow past that bluster. Accomplish America's agenda. That's what should be on your mind. And if you do that, you don't have to worry about being at the other end of their bullwhip in that situation because you would have the Senate. You would continuously have the Senate as long as you're attending to the needs of the American public. That's the point. But I suppose it's also the point that you don't want to do those things. You don't believe in those things. I don't even think the Democratic Party believes in those things. And so you have to find other ways to win. In this very specific case, if you are trusting McConnell, however, he is going to eat you alive. Don't believe the hype. Like, share, and subscribe.